Hello, everyone. Happy August. I'm James Milan, and this is the DPCD update. DPCD, as you know, stands for Department of Planning and Community Development, and I am with the director of that department, as I always am for these updates. That's Jennifer Raitt. Jenny, glad to see you, and happy August to you.
Glad to see you too, and happy August.
We've got several things to talk about today, get updated on, starting with parklets and moving to parks, and then on from there to get a little bit of an update where the open space and recreation planning process stands at the moment. But if that accords with what you understand we'll be talking about, then we're all set and we should get going. I'd like to start with parklets, and specifically the fact that we did get to speak recently to Allie Carter from your department about the Medford Street parklet that is undergoing, or will be undergoing a pretty good size transformation thanks to a grant that we received for that purpose. So just tell us, if you can, briefly about that project and how it stands.
Sure. So the grant will help us to make it more of a sort of a bit more permanent and longer term. Some of the materials that we are going to be able to purchase will make it such that there's improved accessibility, better quality materials, some umbrellas for shading. Also with these umbrellas, they have some lighting underneath them, as well as the opportunity to plug in if you have an electronic device for charging purposes. So really kind of an even more comfortable outdoor space as opposed to what's there right now, which is really, is wonderful to have and is definitely being very utilized, but is limited to essentially metal picnic tables and, sort of the barriers with some, decor sort of in between. But we have a vision and with other people in the business community to make it into an even more improved space that I think will make it even better for the longer term.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that even with the rather Spartan kind of accommodations there over these last months, it's clearly a very popular spot, so a great one in which to make some real improvements.
Yeah, definitely one where it's very well utilized by both, people of all ages seem to be using it, and at various times during the day. Definitely one of our better utilized parklets. And for the long term, I think good to have an alternative to Broadway Plaza when that is also pretty significantly full of people in both the restaurant areas as well as in the more public parklet zones. So having that sort of balance of opportunities in Arlington Center is what we were going for.
Well, staying in Arlington Center, let's talk about a park that I cannot imagine anybody passing through the center would not recognize that there's been work going on and ongoing at the Whittemore Park, which is the park that I don't know how many people associate it with the beer garden that we had in town for a little bit, but it's in front of the Dallin Museum, and it's a very prominent green space in the center of town, but totally inaccessible at the moment. And I'm sure people are curious about both what the progress is and when we might be able to enjoy the finished product.
Yeah, we've made a lot of progress on that project. As most people know, this is at the corner of Mass Ave and Mystic, a green space with trees. It had formerly brick pathways, various benches, some lighting, a lot of trees. Most of those things are going to remain with the exception of the pathway, which we are turning into more of a sort of a circuit path around the park to create a bigger sort of grassy seating area in the middle of the park for sort of those gatherings that as you were alluding to. We had hosted a beer garden. There's many other things that occur in Whittemore Park: Arts on the Green, the Scooper Bowl, various various other community activities often occur in that space. And so having that big, sort of a wider open area is what we were going for. And also restoring the train tracks, which run through a section of the park, which is exactly where they ran through when it was the original train, of course. So we've removed some trees, but planted many new ones, done some landscaping, and sort of are making all these other improvements that I alluded to, as well as adding new benches and new lighting and improved lighting. And improving the material as opposed to using brick, utilizing a material that will really be better in the long run for both accessibility and for creating a more porous pathway. So those are some of the improvements to come. And I think that roughly in terms of the timeline, when everybody can enjoy the park, probably looking at over the next couple of months before you're able to really enter the park and enjoy it comfortably. The phase 2 is also, we've been in design, and that addresses more of the accessibility to the path between Mystic Street and the Jefferson Cutter House. It's sort of, there's the house itself has 2 side gardens. They're going to be replaced by a new garden, including granite retaining wall and the wooden sort of fence that's been in there. All of that is being improved, and the fence, actually, most of the fencing has come down. But all of it is with the intention of creating improved accessibility, which has not been the case in the park since it was created.
Yeah, so, as usual, a kind of dual approach of maintaining the character and historical, kind of updating the historical preservation aspects of this space, but also really, as you said, kind of with the premium being on making it more accessible and even more usable in a variety of ways for the community. So good to know that, and to know that, hopefully we'll get a month or two before the snow and the cold kicks in to enjoy it this year, and obviously for many years thereafter. Continuing on our path, we'll move a little bit further out from the center, and let me ask you about Wellington Park. And Wellington Park is right across the street from the current DPW on Grove Street, so people are also probably pretty familiar with that, and familiar undoubtedly with the consistency of the work being done on Grove Street that precludes a lot of passing through there, at least on cars, and has for the last couple of months. So people might be curious about, okay, what can they look forward to at the end of that? So what will Wellington Park be looking like, and what, if any, sense of the timeline can you give us on that one?
Sure. So Wellington Park is kind of similar to Whittemore Park in that it's being done in sort of these phases, in part related to funding availability, but also in this particular case in relationship to the sort of stormwater management larger vision plan that we have for this particular park. So phase 3, which is the phase that we're in right now, is an expanded porous asphalt pathway. So right now there's actually already been some of that pathway installed, but we're going to be expanding upon it and extending it. Also, there's a sort of bioretention basin for stormwater management purposes that will be installed as part of this particular phase. That adds to some of the stormwater controls that we've put in place as part of the first phases of the project. We wanted to expand upon that, and that was seen as actually a very sort of what's called a smart park, as in making it smarter for climate adaptation and resiliency purposes. Also adding sort of a informal exploration play area where it's a little more like almost an adventure playground. And then also some site amenities like benches, a picnic table, and then also, of course, some new native plantings. This project is being funded by the Community Development Block Grant Program, as well as a CPA, Community Preservation Act fund grant. And then we also received some private funding through the Judy Record Fund, which is a grant through the Mass Audubon. We're also co-managing this project with the Mystic River Watershed Association. They're a nonprofit organization that operates in Arlington, but serves the entire watershed area. So we're very happy to be continuing that partnership and to be able to realize a vision of a smart park for the future.
Yeah,
The
I've
timeline,
noticed.
I think you
Sorry.
asked me about that. I'm sorry. The timeline we anticipate will be through, through this construction season. Sorry.
No problem. Yeah, that it just I have noticed over a number of years of living in Arlington, just incremental changes to that space and to the park and to the facilities around there, from the climbing wall and the renovation to the tennis courts, et cetera. And it just seems like this is going to put a nice cap on that. I'm sure, it will always evolve in ways that make sense, but this is really something to look forward to, and can't wait to enjoy that.
Thank you.
Okay, last thing I need to ask you about, I think, is we've talked about a couple of plans that are in progress. We've mentioned them in previous updates, but focusing on just one of those, the open space and recreation plan. How is what's the update on that, and especially like how have your outreach efforts to get public opinion about these important issues. How have they been going? And what? Let's just remind people what the mechanisms are for them to provide feedback, because I'm sure that opportunity is not yet done.
It is not, definitely. There are many opportunities to continue to get involved. We did have our first public forum back a couple of months ago, and since that time, we've launched a survey, which is still available, and anybody can take that survey to help to contribute to ideas or suggest some issues that might be going on with both open space and recreational opportunities in the community. This is a 5-year plan, so it's looking ahead a little bit, thinking about the town's resources, not just for the town side of, we have a lot of parks and open spaces that are managed and monitored by the town. But also, I think there's a number of friends groups that contribute to and participate in the stewardship of many of our open spaces in Arlington. So we have a lot of different voices who come together and help to shape our parks and recreational opportunities in the community, who are also very interested in sort of the outcomes of this open space recreation plan. So we have the survey that's open right now. We also have what are called sort of listening posts, where at various parks in town, a member of the open space committee, volunteers, are going to be stationed at various posts in town at these various parks, and available to ask questions, answer questions, and sort of get ongoing feedback from people who are actually using the park at that time. So that's sort of the most highly interactive work that we're doing with the open space recreation plan. And then eventually we will be planning for the second forum, but that won't be for sometime into the fall at this point in time. That plan is continuing through the next year, as it does not expire until later in 2022.
Well, I like various things in what you said, but particularly that idea about listening posts, about if volunteers from the Open Space Committee are willing to go out there into the very specific spaces that we're talking about, and then engage the local population, because so often I think you can provide a survey, you can provide other options for people, and they think they might get to it, or they have an interest in giving you some input, but then it just kind of slips through the cracks. To meet people right where they are and to solicit their opinions at that time, it's labor intensive for sure, and again speaks to the power of volunteerism in this town. But hopefully it could be really effective in terms of kind of keeping your fingers on the pulse of what folks are thinking.
Yes, exactly. We want to engage users where they're at, rather than waiting for them to potentially open up the survey and answer some questions, but see what they're thinking as they're in and experiencing the space.
Well, kudos to you guys for coming up with the idea, or whoever did, and kudos to those volunteers who are going to be out there. Hopefully the August sun will not be too mean to them. Anything that we have, obviously we have covered a bunch of topics today, but anything that we have neglected to mention?
No, I think that that covers all of the parklets, parks, and open space planning for today.
Great. Well, it's summertime, so let's focus on everything going on outside. Um, all right, great. Thank you so much. I have been
You're welcome.
speaking, of course, to the director of our Department of Planning and Community Development for this DPCD update. That's Jennifer Raitt. We appreciate her time as always. We also appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us. I'm James Milan. We'll see you next time.